BJ, if you tell a soul. But it was too late. Barbara Jean was already on her phone, her thumbs moving at lightning speed. Brock, Van, Cheyenne, emergency family meeting in the living room. Code white. I repeat, code white. Within minutes, the living room was full. Van was in his pajamas, Cheyenne was holding a sleepy Elizabeth, and Brock had arrived from the guest house looking like he'd been through a wind tunnel. What's going on? Is the house on fire? Brock asked, rubbing his eyes. Better! Barbara Jean screamed, grabbing Reba's hand and thrusting it into the air like a prize-winning boxer. Look, the room went silent. Then, total chaos. Mrs. H, you're getting a new teammate, Van shouted, trying to hug Reba and Julian at the same time. Mom, Cheyenne said, her voice soft and full of genuine happiness. You deserve this. Truly. Brock looked at the ring, then at Julian. For a second, Reba saw a flicker of the old Brock, the one who wanted to be the hero of the story. But then he smiled. A real, bittersweet smile. He's a good man, Red. Better than me at the staying part, I think. He walked over and shook Julian's hand. Welcome to the family, Ashford. I hope you like carrot juice and drama. We have plenty of both. Chapter 26. Shadows of the Past. The engagement party was a small affair, held at the model unit of the Heights project. It was meant to be a celebration of both the business success and the personal future. Reba was standing on the balcony, looking at the city, when she heard the elevator doors open. She expected to see Van or Barbara Jean with more fondue. Instead, a woman walked out. She was tall, blonde, and dressed in a suit that made Julian's navy-tailored numbers look like off-the-rack bargains. She had a cold, surgical beauty that immediately set Reba's instincts on edge. Julian, the woman said, her voice like ice over velvet. I see you've been busy. Julian froze. He turned, and Reba saw a look on his face she had never seen before. It wasn't fear. It was a deep, historical exhaustion. Victoria, Julian said, what are you doing in Houston? I heard you were building something special here, Victoria said, walking into the room and eyeing the blueprints on the wall. Perhaps a bit legally vulnerable? Reba stepped forward, her survivor mode activating instantly. Victoria looked at Reba like she was a stain on the emerald silk dress. I'm Victoria Ashford, Julian's ex-business partner, and his ex-wife. Julian walked over to Reba's side, his hand finding the small of her back. Victoria and I ended our partnership 5 years ago, and our marriage 10 years ago. Partnerships are tricky things, Julian, Victoria said, her eyes fixed on Reba's engagement ring. Especially when they involve intellectual property. I believe I have a claim on the original designs for the Heights project. A significant claim. You're lying, Julian said, his voice low. I bought you out of the firm. Not the design patents, darling. You were always so bad with the fine print. You were too busy being bold to notice the details. She looked at Reba. You must be the agent. Reba, is it? I've heard you're very good at selling vintage charm. I wonder how good you are at selling a project under an injunction. Victoria turned and walked back toward the elevator. I'll see you in court, Julian. And Reba? I hope you kept the receipt for that ring. As the elevator doors closed, the silence in the room was deafening. Chapter 27. The Rehabilitation of Kelly. While the storm was gathering in Reba's professional life, Cheyenne was facing a different kind of war. Kelly had spent 3 days in a holding cell before Cheyenne managed to get her out on bail. They were sitting in the hot kitchen. Kelly looked terrible, her skin was sallow, her hands were shaking, and the day tequila energy had been replaced by a hollow, terrifying silence. I can't go to rehab, Cheyenne, Kelly whispered. I have a job. I have a life. You don't have a life, Kelly, Cheyenne said, her voice firm but kind. You have a car wreck and a court date. This is the ground. You have to decide if you're going to stay down or get up. Why are you doing this for me? I was so mean to you at the mall. Cheyenne looked at her friend. Because I was you. I was the girl who thought she could hide in the shoes and the makeup. I was the girl who thought I could drink my way out of being scared. and someone didn't let me drown. I'm not letting you drown. Gary, the moderator from the 1-2 step meeting, pulled his truck into the driveway. He had agreed to drive Kelly to the treatment center in Austin. Time to go, Kelly, Gary said, walking into the kitchen. Kelly looked at the door, then back at Cheyenne. She stood up slowly, her legs shaking. Will you visit me? Every weekend, Cheyenne promised, hugging her friend. You're a survivor, Kelly. You just don't know it yet. As the truck pulled away, Cheyenne stood on the porch, watching the taillights fade. She felt a profound sense of peace. She wasn't just staying sober for herself anymore. She was staying sober so she could be the person who held the line for others. Chapter 28. The Boardroom Battle. The following morning, the Heights project was officially served with a cease and desist order. Victoria Ashford had moved fast. Reba sat in the boardroom of the real estate board, her jaw set. Julian was sitting next to her, looking like he hadn't slept in 48 hours. This is a nuisance suit, Julian's lawyer argued. Victoria Ashford has no claim to these designs. On the contrary, Victoria's lawyer said, sliding a thick folder across the table, we have the original sketches, signed by Victoria, dated 2 years before the buyout. Julian adapted them for the Houston market without her consent. Reba looked at the sketches. They were beautiful, but they were different. They were clinical. They were the soulless glass boxes she had accused Julian of building when they first met. Wait, Reba said, leaning forward. Reba, not now, Julian whispered. No. Look at these, Reba said, her eyes scanning the blueprints. These aren't the Heights units. These are skyscrapers. These are designed for New York or Chicago. They don't have porches. They don't have green spaces. They don't have heart. She looked at Victoria. Julian didn't steal your designs, Victoria. He threw them away. He built something entirely different. He built something for Houston. He built something for people like me. People who want a home, not a trophy. The core structure is the same, Victoria snapped. The core structure of a house is 4 walls and a roof, Reba countered. That doesn't mean you own every house in the world. You're not here for the design. Victoria, you're here because Julian is happy. You're here because he finally found a partner who isn't interested in your fine print. The head of the board, a no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Gable, looked at the blueprints, then at Reba. Mrs. Hart has a point. These projects are fundamentally different in intent and execution. This isn't over, Victoria hissed, standing up. Yes, it is, Reba said, standing up to meet her. Because in Houston, we don't care about your New York patents. We care about the ground we stand on. And you're standing on my ground. Victoria stormed out, the sound of her heels echoing like a dying heartbeat. As the room cleared, Julian turned to Reba. You saved me. Again. It's a package deal, Julian, Reba said, leaning her head on his shoulder. I told you. We're a team. Chapter 29. The Engagement Gala. Revised. The real engagement gala was held a week later, after the injunction was dropped and the Heights project was officially back on track. This time, there were no ex-wives. There were no code white emergency meetings. There was just the family. Van was acting as the MC, wearing a tuxedo that was slightly too small but a smile that was exactly the right size. Brock was at the bar, drinking ginger ale and talking to the head of the real estate board about football. Barbara Jean was directing the German choir, who were currently performing a moving rendition of The Rose. Reba and Julian stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the people who made their life beautiful and chaotic. I've been thinking, Julian said, leaning into her ear, about the honeymoon. No fondue fountains, Reba warned. I was thinking about the hill country, a small cabin, no cell phones, no blueprints, just us. And the dog? The dog stays with Van. Reba laughed and looked around the room. She saw Cheyenne laughing with Kelly, who was home for a weekend pass. She saw Elizabeth sleeping in Barbara Jean's arms. She saw Brock giving Julian a thumbs up from across the room. Her life was a construction site, yes, but the foundation was solid. The drainage was clear, and the hearth fire was burning brighter than ever. Reba Hart was a survivor, and for the first time in a very long time, she was home.